music was always kind of a passion at the start. Like the way the Manor started was we used to just spit bars on the phone after school, and then our main thing was house parties. Like we used to throw the best house parties, and then whilst we were throwing house parties, we used to like make little rap songs and put them on Facebook. And then most of them were just spitting bars about our mates and about Beckenham and going out to Rascas and the High Street or whatever. And then because of that, we started to get, like, everyone used to make us get up at the house parties and like put the tunes on and sing along. And then again, that kind of just grew simultaneously to the point that we then took our parties into our local, into the Beckenham. And then all of a sudden we were roadblocking the Beckenham every couple of months and doing like 400 or 500 people in there.
Welcome back again to the Stephen Sully Study. I've got I want to say someone in music, but someone who's also an entrepreneur, Scotty Stacks, who is better known for being in the band called the Manor. Thank you very much for your time, brother, and thank you for coming on board. So where should we start? 2021, I mean, last year was a bit of a roller coaster ride for many people. What was it like being in music? How did that sort of affect your business?
It was tough. I think it was tough for all musicians, especially because given the way that the music industry exists nowadays and the way that the modern streaming system is, a lot of artists make the majority of their money on live, and so the timing of the pandemic, especially as it came sort of in spring, just before summer, it meant everyone had their shows cancelled for a year. So a lot of people, you know, us in particular, I would say we probably lost about 80% of our budgeted annual revenue.
Right.
Look at it as a business. And the Manor in particular, we were like the most unlucky because we sold out the biggest show of our lives, 5,000 people at Brixton Academy, and we lost it to the pandemic by 3 days.
I remember you saying actually off air when I spoke to you last week, I mean, Jesus, that must have been a little bit of a kick in the nuts. But what I like about your attitude, even before we just started recording, is you speak like how entrepreneurs and like really determined individuals speak, such as the universe and law of attraction and stuff like that. And what I've noticed from many people that I've interviewed on this podcast is when something happens to them, rather than complain, they find a way to pivot and use it for you rather than against you. So I know we were going to probably leave this to the last bit, but I know because of the pandemic, you've been developing an app, a platform to actually make revenue a little bit more, let's say, modern and a little bit more streamlined for you and your organisation. So if you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we lost the biggest show of our lives to the pandemic by 3 days. Brixton Academy sold out 5,000 people, which was gutting considering the Stereophonics did 80,000 people in Cardiff the weekend before, but it just wasn't meant to be, right? And so then it became clear pretty quickly that we weren't going to do any shows all summer, and like I say, that represented about 80% of our annual rev as a business. So I thought we need to find a way to generate income now beyond the conventional means in the music industry. And so I started thinking about an app. Actually, it first came around, I said, you know what, we should have our OnlyFans, because we've got a really engaged, loyal fan base. We've got a modest amount of followers, but we've got 40,000 followers, but we sold out 5,000 tickets at Brixton Academy. So if you look at that, we sold a hard ticket to about 12.5% of our Instagram following.
Right.
Which as a number is an anomaly. If you look at the kind of people that are doing Brixton Academy shows, I doubt there's many acts in the country who could do, if any, who could sell out at Brixton with 40k followers. And so it says we've got a modest sized but a really engaged, loyal, buy-in fan base. So I said we should have our OnlyFans. I think that'd be jokes. I think it'd just be a funny kind of bit of brand synergy. But at the same time, if we delivered good content that I think there was a market for it. So I looked at OnlyFans and I looked at Patreon, but I realised as a musician, neither of them really had the functionality that I wanted. So what I started to do was design an app for the Manor, which had everything we needed across social media platforms. So all the stuff you give away for free on Instagram and Twitter, and then everything you get, well, in my opinion, underpaid for on Spotify and YouTube. Do you know how much money someone gets paid for 1 million Spotify streams?
I don't know. Fortunately enough, I know Dumi from Disturbing London. I actually went to his headquarters to interview him. And I know Tiny and people like that. And I remember when, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. I mean, he's a really big artist, but I think when they dropped Passion Fruit, I think I remember him telling me something like 1.2 million, 1.25, but that was like the second most streamed tune going at that present point in time. But obviously, if you look at other tunes, he said that, but that is rare, Steve, you know, because that doesn't really happen. So yeah, that's the only bit of insight I've got to it.
So as a base, it differs from artist to artist, weighted in favour of the bigger artists. But on an average, you receive £3,000 for 1 million streams on a streaming platform. And so if you look at that, you know, as from at the lower end of the spectrum.
How do they work that out though? Where do they get the
So basically Spotify take everything in, they subtract their costs, and then they basically have a pool and they split it between everyone else, right? But then it's kind of weighted in favour of the people who get the most streams, right? And they package it in as all different types of royalties are put into different ways. So it's like, a third of a penny. And if you look at every up-and-coming artist, so take an up-and-coming artist that's got 1 million streams, right? Your first 1 million streams, I mean, to get 1 million streams on Spotify, you've got to have something about you.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You must have you're doing something right. It's a pretty significant number. I mean, we look at all these millions of streams on Spotify and you forget about it, but it's like, if you actually think about it, it's a big number.
Yeah.
Someone to listen to your song 1 million times, right?
Massive.
And to think you only get £3,000 for that, who gets their first 1 million streams, which is a fairly significant number, right? And take every take a musician as a startup business, right? And if you quantify the amount of money that they'll spend as a business or invest to get that first 1 million streams on recording costs, mixing and mastering, videos, content, PR, plugin, I would say almost every artist is operating heavily in the red as a business by the time they receive their first 1 million streams. Whereas if you looked at that as a monthly subscription, that equates to 60 people paying £5 a month for a year. And it's like, how much more achievable and realistic does that sound at a low level than 1 million people listening to your song? And so I came up with this app for the Manor because, like I say, everyone's got Instagram followers, and you're either you can't monetize Instagram unless you're selling someone else's product,
getting endorsements and stuff,
doing paid advertising for someone else, or you're trying to move someone to Spotify, YouTube, where you get notoriously underpaid, right? Or to Shopify to sell merchandise, because even Instagram tried to put the shopping button on there, right? But no one wanted to see it on artist profiles because they're not on that. If you're on ASOS Instagram, you don't mind having a shopping button, but people are sort of very particular about how they consume content, and no one wanted to get sold merchandise on an artist profile, not on Instagram.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult to monetize. So I set out about designing an app for the Manor. And then I was introduced to a guy called John Forbes, who I knew through a mutual friend. And all I knew is that him and his brother had some sort of investment fund called the Forbes Family Group, where they invest into young entrepreneurs. John actually approached me to talk about another business I have called Tiger Bites, which is a street food company. And then in the meeting about Tiger Bites, I explained him the concept of that. And I said, like, what's your background? And then he said, oh yeah, I've got 17 years experience in tech. And my older brother is one of 3 UK-based CEOs who's achieved over $1 billion in software exit value. And so I said, all right, well, fuck the restaurant. I've got an app. And so since then, we've now been working together. It's called Bando. We've been working on it for the best part of 9 months now. We're about 8 weeks away from launch. And yeah, we're going to completely revolutionise the music industry.
Did you secure funding for it?
No, so it's been funded in-house at the moment by ourselves and by the Forbes Family Group. We will need to secure, we're going to do a seed round at some point. However, we've decided to soft launch first with a number of kind of what we call like high engagement mutant artists.
Right.
So acts like the Manor and similar, who kind of have cult fan bases, engaged loyal followings, because we know that if we go to VCs with an idea and a concept, yeah, they might take a punt on it, but they're going to have our pants down on equity, right? Whereas if we launch on a low scale, prove the concept, and we go to them with an operational, profitable business, or a business that's turning over money and a model that works, then all of a sudden that's a completely different conversation when it comes to equity, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think I've said to you before, I've only interviewed two people in music. Jevon, good friend of mine, and also a guy called Marcella Spooks. And the common theme I've got from all three of you is when you rap or when you sing, there's one kind of like image of you, and it can be portrayed, and I say this in the most respectful way, like very passionate, kind of aggressive sometimes. But then when you guys start speaking about business, I mean, Jevon's like getting involved with cryptocurrency, NFTs. Yeah. Marcello's like getting involved with acting and also with different concepts and also like restaurants and things like that. And then obviously you've got like kind of your mind on a vision for the future and fingers in different pies. You're all very, very articulate, and you're all very, very kind of know where you want to get to. And one thing I've learned from even being like around someone like Dumi, who's not a music artist, but very, very much pioneered, you know, the whole Disturbing London, etc. A lot of the artists, and correct me if I'm wrong, you use like the music as kind of building your profile, and obviously you can make money out of it, but then you take that profile and you start putting it into other things. So is that the aim? Is it carry on with the Manor or carry on with music and then go into other things, or what's the kind of game plan now?
I see it kind of all running in congruence. Okay. Like, especially for myself, I'm very much like, I'm passionate about business. I've always been passionate about business. I was always the kid in school, like buying Malwams, and it's not like buying them and selling them, or going Wembley Market and getting Nike trainers and whatever, starting selling them in school and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So I very much, music was always kind of a passion at the start. Like the way the Manor started was we used to just spit bars on the phone after school. And then our main thing was house parties. Like we used to throw the best house parties. And then whilst we were throwing house parties, we used to like make little rap songs and put them on Facebook. And then most of them were just spitting bars about our mates and about Beckenham and going out to Rascas and the High Street or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then because of that, we started to get, like, everyone used to make us get up at the house parties and like put the tunes on and sing along. And then again, that kind of just grew simultaneously to the point that we then took our parties into our local, into the Beckenham. And then all of a sudden we were roadblocking the Beckenham every couple of months and doing like 400 or 500 people in there. But the thing is, we never really got any like industry support. We never really got much radio, and that's kind of been a theme to this day. We very much built inside out, and it's been very organic. I think there's a few different reasons for that. Like, we're not like anything else that's out there. I think that's why we went on tour with Mike Skinner, because although our music's sonically quite different, we speak to the same people.
And I was going to say, I mean, like when you hear like the streets and stuff, you know it's the streets. When I listen to you, I mean, I was listening to some of your tunes on the way in this morning, and you get this common thread that even though some of the tunes are different, you get to feel the kind of vibe that the Manor's all about, 100%. And it's not typical, you know, not typical stuff that you listen to. You kind of blaze your own trail in that respect.
Yeah, 100%. And just in terms of, like, we can all spit bars, but the conundrum that's always faced us industry-wise is on the dance playlists, no one wants to really hear rap at the minute, because dance people want to party, but then on the rap playlist, it's quite heavy. So people don't really want to hear dance music. And so we never really, from start to finish, like we get a bit of support here and there, and like we don't complain about it because just it is what it is, but we just don't really sit. But then that's why we have the organic cult following that we do, because we built it from the ground up, brick by brick. But so yeah, even at the start, we never really had much acknowledgement from the industry. But we got introduced to a guy called Craig D'Souza, our primary talent, who was like Stormzy, J House. He's like one of the most successful agents in the country. We had a meeting with him, and that's the one thing we've always done is sold tickets, right? Which is notoriously hard for up and coming artists to do, because you get a lot of artists that have millions of streams, millions of YouTube views, put them on a show and they can't sell out a few hundred people. So we went for a meeting with Craig, and he said, I've heard you like get a lot of people down at your shows, because we were like at Beckenham out in Kent, and it's hard enough to get people to cross the river, let alone come to a BR postcode. People see something that ain't SE or SW, and even then this was before the days of Stormzy and Krypton Conan, and everyone started talking about South London, so like no one was interested. And so we met Craig, and he said, oh look, I heard you lot can do shows. I've seen some of the videos. It looks mad. We said, yeah, we can do 400 or 500 tickets, no problem. And he said, all right, let's. I'll book you a show at the O2 Academy, Islington. And there's 2 rooms there. There's a small room that's like 350 and a big room that's about 1,000. He said, let's put the small room on sale first. And if it goes well, we can always upgrade to the big room. So put the small room on sale. 10 minutes after it went on sale on the day, all our mates are ringing us up saying, mate, what's going on? Like, the link's not working. Rang Craig, said, the link's not working. He said, oh, mate, sold out. We sold out in 10 minutes. So he was like, all right, cool, you lot got something about you. Upgraded it to...
How did that feel?
Surreal, but like expected without being arrogant. Like we knew we could do it. And like, listen, we were selling out 500 people in the Beckenham. I think as soon as someone saw O2 Academy, all of our friends and family mobilised. Do you know what I'm saying? I think like they were proud of us, people, and I think that's kind of like where we're quite honest and self-deprecating as an act. Like, we're not talking about pop champagne and knock you out. We're talking about
you're raw, and there's no filter on it. And obviously, I think, as you said, like, your core fan base are going to resonate with that because it's real. It really is real. It's not like someone's tried to do a textbook kind of band and this is the profile you need to be and we're going to make you look like this. This is just us, you know. You and even you just feel it coming through your music, like the way you are on social media, the way you come across in your music. I mean, it's just genuine and real. And I think some people are not going to really resonate with it, but the people that do are absolutely going to stick to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like, with the comparison with the streets with Mike Skinner, I feel like the reason people make that comparison is because we speak to the same people. And since then, I don't think those people have really been spoken to in the same way since the streets, you know, like urban music and rap and grime and drill. It's blown up massively because it's kind of been accepted by the wider market in England and by kind of like these middle England suburban kids, but having it right, as much as they all want to wear the clothes and speak the slang and this, that and the other, they're not really these people aren't really speaking about their lives. Whereas people look at us, I feel like a lot of our fans and kids and our mates and like people around us look at us and think, if I was a rapper, I'd be like them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so I feel like people want us to win, or like the people around us. And so, yeah, then we upgraded the O2 Islington to the big room, sold that out in a day. And since then, that's just been a running theme. We've sold out every show we've done. We went to Coco, we went to the Brixton Electric, the Forum, Kentish Town, the Roundhouse, most recently Brixton Academy, and we sold out every single show.
Amazing. So if you were to like define or break down or even describe the Manor in a few words, how would you describe the group?
It's very London. It's very honest. We're all kind of... We are like the typical, like, modern suburban group of mates. Like, you kind of got, even like on the surface, you've got a black geezer, a little ginger fella, and an Asian boy. Do you know what I'm saying? I kind of like, Dan is like Cockney through and through. His family were all sort of proper born under the Bowbells. You got John, who's kind of like second generation in this country. Got Jamaican parents with strong values. My parents are from Goa. We've all, and I feel like we're all from that. Again, even where we live, like in like around Beckenham and Bromley, it's even just the fact that that's kind of that little tipping point where the southeast London meets like the more inner part of the suburbia of Kent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I feel like there's a real kind of beautiful, like, multicultural, sort of multi-class mix out there. Is a most group of friends from where from around kind of like Beckenham and Bromley. You've kind of got a few people who might have been brought up on a council estate in Penge, or you might have a couple of people that were born into a lot of money in Chislehurst, but culturally are all very similar because of the way we've grown up.
I've got friends of mine who live in Wimbledon, Morden, those kind of areas, and I wouldn't call them posh, but, you know, I would say they speak a lot better than I do. Very quite clear, and I think some of them went to, you know, private school, etc. And they always just say, like, Bromley and Essex, they kind of feel like the same people. And the one thing they always say is they're always very confident, rightly or wrongly, whether they're doing something not so right or they're doing something right. They're always very, very confident in their ability and what they're going to achieve. And I remember sitting back and thinking, really? Because I was a bit immune to it. I was like looking, I was thinking, really? And now, like, I don't really go out so much in Beckenham no more. My friend has got a restaurant down there, and every so often I go to Branded. And, you know, when you were talking just then, it just reminded me of that conversation I had with him and thinking, yeah, like, I can see that. I can see that people look at place like Bromley, which is in between, like, very affluent. Then you've got, like, the council house kind of, you know, individuals or people, and they all kind of come into this melting pot, and you have got that weird diverse group, but they're all very, very confident. It's, you know, it's a very interesting place to be.
Definitely, and I feel like, especially London's quite like that anyway. Right, like even I was driving through Maida Vale the other day, and Maida Vale is the one. Maida Vale is always like for me the clearest example of it, because that's where you've got like ridiculous houses on one side that literally look out their window onto council estates. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Or like even like like where the Mozart estate is, like in that kind of bit of West Kensington and stuff like that, in like or Ladbroke Grove, that bit of West London. And but I feel like the more you get in, everyone's a little bit more on top of each other, and it's a little bit more dense, and it doesn't have the kind of community feel that it does around where we live. And I feel like where we're in South London and we're a little bit further away from that super busy hustle and bustle of central.
Bit more space in it.
There's a little bit more space, so everyone's less on top of each other. So I feel like we kind of integrate a little bit better. Yeah. And so that's why you will have a group of mates with 10, 15 different people. Or you could be at a house party and everyone's in a 5 mile radius and everyone's been brought up completely different. But sometimes you might not even realise who's come from Chislehurst and who's come from Penge and who's come from whatever, because everyone's just like this big eclectic mix of South London. Yeah. That's why it's beautiful, do you know what I'm saying? And I feel like that's why, but then although I would say we're very South London and very London centric, I feel like what we talk about does translate across the country, and it is kind of just that middle suburban England, do you know what I mean? We're not kind of like, sometimes people call us like, you sort of like the real, like Corrupt FM's a parody and you like the real life version of that. And I don't necessarily think that. I don't like, we're not, I love Corrupt FM, but it's clear what they're doing with their brand, whereas we're not Chav UK. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? Just because we speak a certain way, we might drop our T's and use a bit of slang. Do you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of the people around when we grew up, it's a nice area. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? We're not like we're not out of an episode of Shameless. Do you know what I'm saying? So we're not like these kind of token parody council estate kids. We're just a little bit of everything all mixed into one, you know? Yeah.
So what makes, like, as far as rapping, singing, you know, being in music, what makes like a good rapper or a good singer? Because the reason why I asked you this question is because I know when we were chatting and you sent me a message, and in there I noticed that you mentioned about doing sales for 2 years. Yeah. And I'm going to digress a little bit here, but I've just got back from Devon, and on the way back from Devon, my mother-in-law said to me, I wonder what Mason's going to be when he's older, because we don't butt heads, me and my mother-in-law, but I'm very driven. I'm very, no, you don't take part, you win. Like, that's my mentality. Yeah. And she's like, no, it's all about taking part. I said, no, that's the wrong advice to give my son. Yeah. It's not about taking part. It's about fucking winning. There's no point of coming second, because if you're just okay with doing that, you're setting yourself up just to take part in anything you do and not win. First. It's about winning. And that's my mentality. So anyway, when he goes to bed at night, I always say the last thing to him, which is dream of success and stuff like that. Anyway, she was like, well, what do you think he's going to be, or what do you want him to be? And I said, well, if I could wish for anything, it would either be an athlete, like a footballer, like a Formula 1 driver, even a boxer, because I love boxing, or being a business person. But if he was turning around to me, if he could go into the future, then come back as a kid, and he was asking me the question, what is one of the first fundamental skills for me to learn? I would always say the same thing, learn sales. And she said, I've got an image of a car salesperson. I said, no, you've got the wrong image. Sales is all about effective communication. No matter what you do in life, whether you're a mother, father, someone in music, someone in business, someone who's an athlete, it's all about selling. You've got to sell yourself, sell your product, sell your service. If you don't know how to do that, you could have the best product in the world, but no one's going to know about it. Or they might know about it, but they won't feel compelled. It's a bit like that band or the music groups you were saying. people can stream their music, but the moment they need to sell a ticket, they don't feel compelled to go and see it. And obviously you clearly, you guys and you as an individual clearly have got that. So Sals, how much foundations or how much sort of mindset or characteristics did it give you for now going into business and also in your music?
Just like everything really, just because it's like every exchange you have in life is a sales pitch, isn't it? Like whether you're speaking to everyone you introduce yourself to, you're always trying to sell yourself as a person. Like when you meet a bird, anything you're doing, there's always that kind of one-on-one exchange where whether it's conscious or subconscious, you're trying to sell someone something with every conversation that you have.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And even whether it's, and like you say, whether it's just fundamentally, whether you're actually trying to convince them something or whether you're trying to encourage them to take action or whether it's simply trying to get your point across. And one thing you said there, I think is key, effective communication. And it's like, what's the point in talking if the person you're speaking to doesn't understand, you know? And I feel like a lot of people have got so much to say, but then they don't know how to adapt it to the person that they're speaking to. And so I feel like one thing that sales taught me is to be understood, you have to listen first. And then once you understand the person you're speaking to, you can then identify the best way to communicate with them for them to listen. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's like someone says, I remember the other day, and obviously it's super ignorant. I remember once someone said to me, I was talking to this girl and she was a bit of a div. But she said, if I go to a foreign country and they don't speak English, that's their problem, innit? And I'm thinking, it's absolutely not, is it?
Yeah, that's a bit shallow, isn't it?
It's ridiculous, but I feel like that's just a lot of people's kind of mentality. And I think a lot of people who kind of like get on their high horse, and people, intelligent people as well, who've got a lot to say, who feel like it's the person they're speaking to's responsibility to understand them. And it's like, well, no, because then you might as well if they don't understand you might as well save your breath.
Yeah.
If you're going to bother speaking, you need to speak to them in a way that they'll understand you. So I feel like that effective communication. And then just again, in the mindset, I remember being around you and the other guys you was around and seeing, I feel like that was the first time I was around really driven, successful people, and especially people who hadn't been born into money. And I think it's quite clear now through my kind of endeavours in life and my journey in the business world, it's quite interesting the clear difference in mentality between people who have been born into money and people who are self-made successful.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And at the same time, but then there's stuff to be learned from both sides.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sometimes now recently I've kind of moved out to Keston, and like the people I live around there my friend, he was kind of been born into a fairly privileged life, and as I've gone through music, I've met a lot of people who've been born into quite privileged lives. And one thing I've definitely learned from them is that although they're all money motivated because it's the way they were born, they don't put it on a pedestal, and they don't show it they don't show it too much respect, if you know what I mean. Because it's like it's almost more of a non-issue to them.
They're conditioned. They've had it, they've been around it for so long that it's part and parcel of their life now.
100%. And it's like we don't get excited to have hot water in the morning.
Yeah.
Whereas someone who lives in a less developed country would.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so although we still enjoy a hot shower and they still enjoy...
We just expect it though, you know?
Exactly. And it's the same thing with them. And so I've learned a lot from them in that they're shrewd, but they're not stingy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think there's definitely a difference between being frugal and being stingy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's almost like it can work in two ways. I mean, I've seen like literally rich kids, but I would say more from being up here. So my former business partner moved into Mayfair, and over the years he, developed a lot of, quite good friends, and they end up becoming my friends, and some of them end up becoming our clients of ours. And some of them were very shrewd, very determined young people. They were predominantly men. But then some of them were, their family was so wealthy, they just went off the rails, drinking, drugs, and they had no purpose in life. And literally they were blowing money like it was going out of fashion. But then the other ones, like you said, they become they're very familiar with money and they just expect it into their life. So where it's not such a big deal for them, it almost was like they gravitated towards it quicker because it was just expected. They were in harmony with that vibe or that system of making money. And it seemed to come towards them, and many doors opened up. I mean, one guy, I remember he closed his massive deal, and I used to think to myself, I mean, he's one of the richest families in Mexico. I mean, they literally own the press, the media, they own the equivalent to Boots over there. And he signed this deal, and I'm like, how the hell did you pull that off within a matter of a few months? And the guy was like 22, 23 years of age. Wow. And I was thinking, that must be because you've been in and around money all your life, and you're actually quite shrewd yourself. He wasn't one of these kids that had just go off the rails. He was quite determined. So it can work in both ways. But yeah, going back to the point, like for me, I think sales has been a blessing for me. I didn't come from money. I didn't come from a poor background, but I come from a typical, middle class. My mum and dad, there was times when they struggled for a bit of money. As you all probably know, most divorces end because of money situations, and I think that was part of the reason why that my mum and dad split up. And I remember growing up, my dad always used to say to me, money is important, and if you can have the better things in life, go and do it. He used to instill that into me, but there was no system. And when I found sales and I got into it, I was like, this is my calling. This is the promised land. When they talk about America being land of opportunity, sales is the land of opportunity. Because again, if you're going to go into business, music, you got to sell yourself. And it's not about the words, and it's not always how you say it. It's the vibe that you give off. Is this person determined? I mean, we spoke about earlier about boxing, and typically when I was I had to do a rendition, not a rehearsal, but like I had to qualify for the Queensberry League, and they put you into sparring to see which level you're at. And I remember getting into the ring, and there was all these strangers around me, and they went, right, Sully, you get in with this guy. And as the guy got in, I already knew he was going to be good before he even threw a shot at me because of the aura. And that's also selling yourself. Like, I've got this presence. So yeah, I just wanted to voice that because I like speaking to people who've been in sales, because I feel like there's the rapport there, and I feel now that we're a bit older and looking back, the mindset's giving you the characteristics, the fundamentals, the foundations. It must have served you quite immensely.
100%, and it's just that idea of kind of congruence, and that what is like the epitome of the picture of a successful person, and what does their life look like 360 in every area. And that's why I kind of make that, I digressed a little bit, but I made that comparison from people who are like self-made to people who have come from money but are doing well. And when you look at like guys like us who maybe not been born, like I said, I wasn't born poor either. My mum and dad didn't come from a lot, but they came here and they worked hard. So we've always been okay. Do you know what I mean? Like, not really struggled. They're not going on mad fancy. Not a couple nice holidays a year. My dad drives an okay motor. I live in a townhouse in Sydenham. Like, we've been cool. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But then, so it's like a lot of the stuff that we kind of look at successful people and try and mimic and mirror, and a lot of these kind of people who are born into that life do it as second nature. And so one thing about sales kind of taught me is that it's not just about, like, mindset comes from like inside and out. Do you know what I mean? So it's like you can read and read and read and teach yourself as much knowledge, but then it's also your actions and the action that you take and the sacrifices that you make to better yourself, which then create that, it would then inflate your self-opinion, which will then flow out of your aura. And I feel like a lot of that, especially in sales, because sales is such a psychological battle and an emotional roller coaster, and it makes you resilient. Do you know what I'm saying? And so you need to do as much as you can away from sales to make sure you've got the best kind of opinion of yourself, so that when you're putting yourself across, it comes across to other people. Yeah. So I feel like everything I know now, or like my whole journey into kind of personal and self-development and mindset, all started with that foundation of sales. Yeah.
Makes you resilient as well, because I mean, in music, trying to get I remember reading that, you got signed in 2015. It you got dropped in 2018 and then re-signed straight away basically in 2019. And if you think about it, that's like sales as well, because you get the yes, you think you're flying, then you get dropped, which is your no. And most people at that point will crumble. They'll be like, oh, I can't do it. You know, maybe it's not for us. Maybe I should go and pursue another career. And it's only the resilient sales people that realize that every no is closer to a yes. And just because they said no to you doesn't mean the whole market or the whole world is saying no to you. It's just that one individual or that one entity. And then you go on, reformulise your pitch, pivot a little bit, and before you know it, another door opens. And I think that is like a metaphor, analogy in life almost. You know, you got to keep on going. You're going to get setbacks after setbacks. But if you can keep on going, as cheesy and as cliche as it sounds, you're going to become a success eventually.
100%. And it's just law of averages and getting used to that. Sales is just the volume. You increase your volume of rejection and you increase your volume of failure, and so you get resilient to that. And I remember it's like Will Smith. I remember seeing Will Smith speak, and he said, "If you want to be successful, get comfortable with failure, because successful people are the ones that fail the most."
Absolutely,
because they're the ones that are okay with failing the most. And if the more yeses you want to get, you're gonna have to go through more no's. And so if you can get comfortable with a million no's, then you're gonna have more yeses.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I feel like that filters through to every kind of walk of life. And and I know it's cliche and they say, oh, there's no such thing as a loss and you win or you learn. And as much as I'm very mindful with my language and like, you know, I've read all the books and I try and always speak in the positive. But then at the same time now, I'm not scared of the word failure anymore. I'm not scared of the word loss anymore. Because as much as I'll try and speak in the positive tense and try and manifest positive stuff, I'm okay with those sort of words because I understand that winning and losing is part of life.
Yeah, I feel like it's a bit of a paradox because I do like the thing. I think it was Conor McGregor's coach that made the book, which was win or like feedback or something like that, and it's basically taking your loss and converting it into a positive. And I fully respect that and I fully appreciate that. But then sometimes you need to say things how they are. If it's a loss, it's a fucking loss. Like, it's a loss and deal with it. Sometimes I feel that if you sugarcoat everything, then you're not... It's like, I know, I'm using a really horrendous scenario here, but let's just say I've got, I don't know, like a fucking deadly illness, like cancer or something. I'm not going to sugarcoat it and go, oh, I've got a little fucking bump, you know, or something like that. I've got something serious and I've got to deal with it. There's no good sugarcoating it. So, yeah, I just think it's the nature of the beast of salespeople. When something happens to them, you know, you do reframe it slightly, make it an easier thing to deal with, and then moving on. So anyway, I want to ask you this, right? So in sales, what a lot of people get nervous about is obviously doing the presentation in front of other people. And again, me thinking about what you do. You as a rapper is a bit like a salesperson. Like, was there a moment where, like, you could probably rap, but was you a little bit nervous trying to do it in front of a camera or on a mic or something? Like, how did you get over that barrier? And also, how did you learn to rap? Because, I mean, is it something that came to you naturally or something you had to work on?
I guess in terms of learning to rap and how to rap, it's just a bit of both. Like, I don't play instruments. I used to play a bit of saxophone in school and I understand music, but I'm not a classically trained musician by any means. I'm not Justin Bieber. I'm not someone who will sit there and I'm not Jay-Z. I'm not a very good freestyler. I don't write off the top of my head. I've sat down and I guess it was born from a passion for music first and foremost, and just from a love for music, which made me want to start making music. And then as you start writing and then you start doing it and then you listen to it back and then you compare it to what you're listening to and then you learn kind of little nuances and how to develop it. And so I guess there's I would say it's strange because I was always like more of a scientist than an artist when I was young, like going through school. Like I've always loved music, but I wasn't a very artsy person. I was maths. Do you know what I mean? Like my old man was in the city, he worked in metals. My plan was always to go into metals and be a metals trader. I just wanted to work on the London Metals Exchange, and that's what I wanted to do. Turns out my life took me in a different journey. But I've always seen myself as very left side of the brain rather than right. which I found it was curious that I've now ended up in a creative industry, albeit I've got business interests running simultaneously with that. But then I'm born in a borderline of 2 star signs, so I've kind of got a bit of both in that as well. Do you know what I mean? But,
Would you say you're quite spiritual?
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm materialistic as hell at the same time. Do you know what I mean? But I feel like the world we live in is the world we live in, and
Of course.
I think you've got to have a bit of both.
Yeah, definitely.
Really. Well, you don't have to, but I feel like that's balance.
Yeah,
you know what I'm
like
saying?
I think there's been a bit of a stigma maybe over a couple of years, and I think it's now converting back round that it should be about materialistic things, and it should all be about the greater good and all this kind of stuff. And I get all that, and I fully accept that. But I think like materialistic things make you realise that you're doing something right, you know, and you get to enjoy for a moment something like it's like a medal. It's like you got, whether that's car, watch, new house. I think it's important to have these milestones, knowing that they're not the be all and end all of success. I mean, I know people that drive around in Ferraris, got a very nice watch, but live in a dump, you know, and I think their principles financially are slightly off. Who am I to say? You know, everyone's got different goals, but personally, like maybe align certain other things before you get that sort of stuff. You can look rich, but true wealth is beyond that, 100%. You know. And I know living in Keston, I live right near you, that the people around now, you know, the Rio Ferdinands who live in the area, the big developers live in the area. My friend's got the largest private care homes, Aussie. You know, these people are very wealthy, and they speak and they align their finances in a certain way, like you cannot believe. And I just wanted to hit home that point. And I think the spiritual side of things as well is also very, very important, because if you don't have that other box ticked, I feel like you become a bit empty, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like it's just wealth is inside and out.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And this is the thing, and I feel like there's a lot of this kind of the way that the divide's created in society, and there's this kind of like idea of the haves and have-nots and whatever, and it's just, I mean, the problem is the disparity. The problem is not being rich, because I feel like we're all meant to be rich. That's why we're here. Why would we not all want to experience the best and most beautiful things that engineering and modern technology in this world has to offer? Like,
Exactly.
there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Like, why would you not want to drive an amazing car, wear the nicest fabrics, travel the world, eat the best food? Like, do you know what I'm saying? And now I feel like there's this kind of, because of the disparity, there's now this kind of like, some people will kind of look down their nose on one side, and some people will look at the other. And but again, I feel like now, like you say, it's kind of going hand in hand, and there is definitely a rise in spirituality. But in terms of how we kind of view it, it's like, I think it's just about finding the balance about, it's what do you want? Do you know what I mean? Like what is riches to you? Like you say, you know some people who drive Ferraris and have a nice kettle but live in a dump, whereas I know sometimes I'll drive down the nice roads in Chislehurst for a bit of motivation, or I'll drive through Keston Park, and I absolutely love it when you see a £6 million house that's got a beat down Volvo estate on the driveway. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my running route behind my house goes into Keston Park, and I basically loop all the way around there, and then I go across the road and go into Farnborough Park, and I sort of zigzag through there. And I purely do it, one, to get fit, unwind, like in a weird way, my mind, it sort of like opens up a bit, but then also to get motivation. I love going around them places, but every so often you'll come across a house, and it's not a one-off. It's not that, maybe someone's there. The car's always there, and it's a beat-up car in a very, very, definitely a wealthy house. And I think to myself sometimes, why haven't they got a nicer car? And sometimes it's just not that important to them, you know. But for me, wealth is about doing what you want, when you want, however you want to do it, you know, however sort of way of doing it, whether it's getting a private jet somewhere or doing this or doing that. Or I remember Rob Moore said something to me. He said something along the lines of, when you make more, you can give more away. And I think that really is the definition, serves financially. Well, not even financially. I mean, if you're educated or in other aspects, but I think that is the true wealth. If you've got more or something, you're able to give it away to a lot more people to help them and serve them. And I think that is a definition of being wealthy.
Absolutely. I listened to a podcast recently, Matthew McConaughey, and it was sick because he talked about the concept of selfishness and selflessness. And he said, what's the point in being selfless if there's not much of yourself to give? And he said, you know, there's a stigma around being selfish, but to be selfless to its fullest extent, you first need to work on yourself and putting yourself in a position that allows you to do so. So first and foremost, be selfish.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Be selfish, work on yourself, be the best you can be. And it's like you say, when you talk about giving away, philanthropy goes beyond finances. It could be in knowledge, it could be in love, it could be in kind of
experience, wisdom, and stuff.
And many different ways. There's many different ways to being selfless, but to do that, you need to put yourself in a position that allows you to do so. And so I feel like I'm very much trying to find that sort of balance myself. It's like even moving to Keston, I always thought I would go, like I grew up in Sydenham and I've lived around there my whole life, bit sort of Sydenham, Beckham and Bromley. And then I always saw myself as going further in. Do you know what I mean? Like when I was looking at houses before I moved to Keston, I was obsessed with living in like Chelsea. I just wanted to live in Chelsea. So I was looking at Chelsea Bridge Wharf. I was looking at
Battersea.
Yeah, I looked at Beaufort Street just because it was Beaufort Street. And I thought, that's just, I fucking want that on my address. Do you know what I mean? Because when you go somewhere and someone asks you your address and you put Beaufort Street, they'll listen to you. Do you know what I mean? But then I got offered, it was just, again, it came out of a really unusual circumstances in the first lockdown that this opportunity came for me to go live in Keston on a property that's got like 15 acres of land around, swimming pool, like it's a beautiful place. And it's not in walking distance of a station, but I drive everywhere anyway. But I never really thought that was something that I wanted yet. But then it was the first lockdown, so I thought, I'll go there for a little while temporarily. And now I can't imagine being anywhere else because it's like, as much as I love coming up here and I love the hustle and bustle of the city, I can come in and get that whenever I want. However, when I go home, I've got space and tranquility, and I feel like looking out of my window and seeing floods of green, it does so much for my mental health.
You know what? It's so weird because I too, there might have been a bit of envy. I was envious a little bit of my business partner because where he was a bit more bachelor-esque, you know, we were business partners, but I had a missus and I was in my mid-20s and he had moved uptown, and I was like working up here and then seeing like a bit of a lifestyle, and I'm thinking, man, I should be doing this. Yeah. Like, I think I was getting that FOMO, like missing out. And I thought, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna sell my house and we're gonna move uptown or move closer to town. And we started looking at Wimbledon and all these areas, then start further in like Battersea, and I realised I was going from like quite a nice big house to like same amount of money, and the house was getting smaller. And then I think I was having a conversation with now my wife, and it was like, but you're going to get less for your money and you're never going to have a break because you're going to be in the thick of it all the time. And when I go, like, my in-laws live in Devon, so every so often I go down there, and I was there recently and I put something up on my Instagram, and literally as you open up the window of their house, you're looking at green fields like you can't really see any other building anywhere else. It's very, very quiet community, place called Connaughton. You could literally walk it in 10 minutes whole entire the little village. You're in and out of it very, very quickly. And occasionally I have a few people go, oh man, green. I'm like, what? And these people live in London. They don't see anything else apart from trains, buses, taxis, pollution, people, and that does affect your mind. And we said off air, like you and the Manor done a few podcasts, like 6 episodes, and you spoke about mental health and stuff like that. And I think actually living in cities can factor in towards, you know, a bleak outlook sometimes on life, and you feel congested, you know, and it can stress you out and cause anxiety.
100%, like 100%. And it's something I never realised until I actually got there. But I guess I suppose South London is actually quite green.
It is, yeah.
South East London, especially even where I grew up in, like Sydenham, Crystal Palace. If you look at, like, I was in North London the other day, and it's like everything's the pavements are smaller, there's less trees, less parks, little things like that. And just now, like, just waking up and looking out the window and seeing green, and there's just something about, and I don't know if it just sounds a bit hippie-ish, but just something about walking around trees and greenery and seeing lakes and hearing birds and little things like that. It makes such a difference. But you only, I guess I've always enjoyed it, but I've never immersed myself in it. And since I've been there for almost a year now, I can really notice a change in my vibration as a person. Like I was seeing a girl at the start of this year who lived in Battersea Reach, and it was sick. And I thought, right, I've got the best of both now. Do you know what I mean? So I go out to hers for a few days a week, and I'm in Battersea Reach. I'm in the thick of it. There's 150 things on Deliveroo. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's got everything I want. And then when I'm sick
Uber, a click of a button.
yeah, do you know what I'm saying? And when I'm sick of that, I go back down to Keston, and it's all good. But then the more I kind of went back and forth, and the more we kind of discussed, if this goes anywhere, where are we going to go? The idea of moving there full time just didn't sit with me. And as much as it was nice to go up there for a couple of days, I really felt more balanced and centered when I was back around that wide open space. And especially even just because of where I live in Keston, like I say, there's a lot of land around me, so I've got no neighbours. So just, I don't know, man, it's just like, and I grew up in a townhouse, and I've always kind of lived, and even when I lived in Shortlands, I lived in a nice detached house, but there was still, I was on a road with houses either side, whereas right now I kind of look out my door and I don't see any neighbours. And it's hard to explain without living in it, but just that feeling of external space creates a feeling of internal space at the same time.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
totally resonate with that. I mean, I'm so like skipping outside, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm very, very fortunate here because, again, like you were using the example about using hot water. You know, we expect to have hot water. When I go home at night, if I want to have a bath or shower, I expect there to be hot water. And with having a garden, it's like almost like, yeah, this is completely normal. But during lockdown, there were people in maybe council houses, one bedroom flats in the centre of London, and they couldn't leave. And they got maybe 3 or 4 kids, so it's chaotic. You know, they might not be on a lot of money. It might be hot. You know, and it really was playing on people's emotions, their mental health, the mental health side of things, and it was really causing problems. So, yeah, like, you know, count my lucky stars. I had that during lockdown, and I can only imagine it's the same for you with Keston.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just really, I don't know, man, I think it was really, although it was kind of detrimental to me in terms of my music career on the face of it, but it allowed me time to, because I've got a few different business interests and I've always juggled plates, but there was one which stayed open and flourished through the pandemic, and it flourished and we did record numbers because everything else slowed down, and I was allowed to dedicate myself to something 100%. Even little things like, again, it sounds super hippie-ish, but I like started to appreciate the beauty of nature. Like I remember even when I went to Crystal Palace Park, and I went for a walk round, and because I've been going for like nice walks in Keston and around Keston Ponds and everywhere like that. And then I thought, you know what, I just fancied going back to Crystal Palace Park because I hadn't really been. It's something I've never really done.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I live such a fast-paced life. I've never really just gone for a walk, especially near where I live. You know, sometimes you might go out to the country and you go for nice walks, but I've never really just gone for a walk where I lived. And I walked around Crystal Palace Park, and like, bear in mind, I grew up in that park, lived there all my life. I was walking around that park, I was like, this park is fucking sick.
Yeah.
Like,
Still got the dinosaurs in there.
Yeah, there's the dinosaurs, there's a maze, there's a remote controlled car track, there's an Olympic sports centre, there's the steps, there's an amphitheatre where Bob Marley used to perform, there's a farm. Do you know what I'm saying? I was looking around, I was looking like, learning about trees, and it's even like, I know like my grandma was quite a green-fingered person, like she used to love her garden. And then since I moved to Keston, and now I've got like all these, and just by chance the person that owns the property who I live on there, he's a landscaper. And so like he started teaching me, like now I can walk around and I can name trees and I understand about trees and plants, and like it's really just opened my mind up to a whole different side of life and giving me a new perspective and perception on that side of life, which now I feel like as things are starting to pick up again, has given me a new type of balance. And I've kind of I'm a lot more mindful. And like I've always understood the concept of mindfulness, but I feel like as I've now spent time, I've been more still. Do you know what I'm saying? I was always kind of fast paced and I didn't have much time for stillness, whereas now as I feel there's a nice kind of balance. And so now I feel like it's taught me how to speed up and slow down quite naturally. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm quite into meditation now. I like to I'll try and digital detox on Sundays. So on Sunday, like, I can't get away from my phone and my laptop completely, because like, I suppose I say I can't, I suppose I could, but it's just like, I'll check it in the morning and I'll check it in the evening, but I like to try and just get away from my phone during the days. And I feel like, yeah, it's just given me this new kind of, it's opened my mind up to a different side of life that I feel like now moving forward, as things start to speed up again, will really have a positive impact on me moving forward. And I just feel like it's kind of just raised my perspective just from here just to up there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I feel like we kind of, when we live this kind of life in business, and I always say we, as a society, we kind of live with our heads down a bit. And I'm quite literally, like, because of everyone's spending fucking hours and hours a day looking at their phones. And like, when you're walking around now, people are generally looking at their phones or looking down. And whereas I feel like lockdown taught me to just look up a little bit. Do you know what I mean? So now when I walk up, I'll kind of just look up, and I'm like, I've spent a lot more time looking up and looking at trees and looking at the sky and little things like that. I feel like I learned a lot about myself during lockdown.
Definitely. Do you know what it's also made me realise as well is, you know, like, there's a few things, like even during lockdown, the things I call basic, you know, being outdoors, you know, having my own garden, having my own space. I mean, if I had moved further into London, imagine I just took that step, I would actually be furious, like thinking, why did I move out of a house which had a garden and it was in the countryside basically? Now I'm in centre of London, and it's really reinforced the good decision to stay there and stay in that community. But also like being just with my family, you know, like with my young son, my wife, and still training, still working, and then on the weekend just being with them, rather than, oh, there's a show coming up, so I've got to do an art show, or there's this thing to do or that thing to do. Well, there was none of that. It was just go home, you know, make some good food, maybe even get a takeaway occasionally, and just sit there, watch a film, and just do the basic things. But the other thing is, it demonstrates that how quickly life can change. You know, your normal life certainly can be taken away quite quickly. And if you think about it, that can happen anyway with health, new regulations, new laws being passed. And I think, and I know it's very, very hard for people to swallow and digest this, but don't take things for granted, you know. It's, you know, look at an extreme example. What happens if suddenly oxygen was taken from us? What would you do then? Like, how would you pivot? You know, and it would literally be the strong would survive and find a way, and the weak would perish, you know. And it's a really extreme example, and God forbid that never happens. But if you really think about it, it was a little bit like that. Your freedom taken away, just good taken away. And I think it really supports the fact that you need to live in the here and now. And I am the worst person for that. You know, after this conversation, I'm going to be back on the phone speaking to collectors. I'm going to be doing this, doing that. I'm going to be on my phone. When I get home at night, I should be relaxing, but I won't be. I'll be on the phone. And I think it's that paradox again of trying to become a self-made millionaire, successful person, billionaire, juggernaut in your industry versus trying to have a balance. You know, so I thought I'd just voice a couple of those things, because 2 years ago, life was going in a direction that we thought it was all going in, and then suddenly something happened, and you know, things are spun on its head. And even though they're saying July the 19th, things are going to go back to what we call normal, they've already teed it up a little bit that deaths are going to go up, and you know, restrictions may come back in at certain points in a lot of governments around the world. So, you know, without trying to sound like a conspiracy kind of topic now, it supports the fact that anything can happen in life, and you need to be prepared for it.
Absolutely. I think leaning away from just the pandemic subjectively, like objectively, this change is inevitable. And I always say it, like, my life has taken so many twists and turns and been such a roller coaster. It's like the only thing you can be sure of, I always say it, it's like you can plan and plan and plan as much as you want. And I'm heavy on goals and execution, and a lot of the goals I set, I'll hit, and some I won't, and I'll make plans. But I feel like no matter where you think you're going to be in 12 months, it's probably going to be different. It's probably going to be absolutely different. Do you know what I mean? Something's going to change. And so I feel like embracing change is something that everyone's had to do over the last 12 months. And just embracing the concept that there's not, I always like to say that there's change is neither good nor bad. It's just change. Yeah. And it's what you make of it and how you respond to change that will ultimately determine whether it's good or bad. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier about the way that you take wins and the way that you take losses. And, you know, it's ultimately, once you win, you've won, then you move on. Do you know what I'm saying? Don't dwell on it too much. And same way with a loss, like regret. Regret's a wasted emotion, right? Because feeling negative emotions in the present for something that's already happened is pointless. But hindsight is a beautiful thing, yeah, because that's how we grow and how we developed, and the ability to look back and analyze and learn is a beautiful thing. But yeah, change is inevitable. It's how you respond to it that determines what effect it has on your life.
Definitely. This is a bit of a segue into like what you were talking about with the Manor when you done them podcast episodes. So it's a bit on like the pandemic and the restrictions and the lockdown and creating a lot of mental health issues. But then also, I feel even in that moment where people couldn't get out and couldn't see their loved ones and they were told to be doing this and that, they were on social media a bit more. And then it made them feel a bit more resentful because they were looking at other people that were portraying this life like, oh, I'm doing this. And they're like, oh, well, I'm locked in here and I can't. And it started creating that problem. But also something which is a bit more relevant. We just had the Euro 2020 and obviously we got to the final and then we lost on penalties and, you know, it was fantastic by the country and also England. But then you have the height of now racism and the trolling and the malicious messages that have been sent to our players. So I feel like they overlap. I feel like the mental health, the anxiety, the fear, the anger, the racism and all this kind of stuff is all coming ahead right now. I just wanted your take on it because you sound like someone that is quite articulate, very aware about these situations, and I wanted to see what your view was.
Yeah, I feel like we're at a really interesting point in history on a global level. Like socially, there's unrest all over the world for various different reasons as well. Like it was strange. I find it, like I said, I'm a bit of what you would call a conspiracy theorist. Do you know what I mean? All I like to say that I like to ask questions and I don't take what I see on face value, right? Like, and it's the thing that I'm not saying I know.
But then someone else could call that entrepreneurial. Because I've said it off air a little while ago. When someone says to me, they might raise, oh, you're challenging what's been said. Well, yeah, I've always been taught to challenge something. If it doesn't make sense to me, challenge it. I mean, I noticed you said you were plant-based. I'm not fully plant-based. I'm pescatarian. I fish probably twice a week. But I'm predominantly like, veg and fruit and stuff like that. I feel it's just healthier. And when I started looking into it, there was two elements. It was one, animals are being tortured, like it or not, they're being tortured. And even if it's 1 out of 100 that I used to eat, I'd rather save that one because I don't think it's right. I think morally it's not right. And the second thing is, actually, if you're consuming all this protein all the time, that turns into cancers. So it's probably better for me anyway from a moral and also a health point of view. But all you're being marketed all the time is protein. Do this, do that, do this, do that. Build bigger muscles because of the protein and stuff. And I've realised over time that's just marketing. And it's a bit like what's happening now with certain things. It's like marketing. So you have to be entrepreneurial to... Yeah, and I digress there a little bit, but I'm quite passionate about that subject as well.
No, absolutely. And I just think that I'm wary of everything that the media tells us. Yeah, some people will look at me and think I'm a raging tinfoil hat wearer. And I'm absolutely fine with that because, one thing that we can be sure of is that the media lies. Yeah, without trying to go too far into like fucking talking like I'm David Icke or whatever. We don't need to go in that direction. But we're talking about opening school, about propaganda. Do you know what I mean? The World War II, World War I, Vietnam War, we've seen it in our own lifetimes. Every major event that we've seen from 9/11 to weapons of mass destruction with Saddam, to Brexit, it's been proven afterwards that the media has lied to us in some degree. So right now, I don't know what is actually going on, but I would hazard an educated guess that the papers are lying, first and foremost, right? And so socially, economically, it just seems strange to me what's going on in the world. Like, even I remember when we were having the kind of BLM and defund the police protests over here, there was a similar thing going on in Nigeria for a completely different reason, for NSARS. And I just found that strange. Like, wow, well, there's like civil unrest and defund the police protests going on because of major events in completely different places in the world. Like right now, today, I've seen this morning, there's like mass riots in South Africa, and they're looting and burning down the whole country. And I just feel like we're in a very strange, quite pivotal point in history. And I feel like it's interesting, like we say about a lot of people's response to lockdown, and earlier we touched on spirituality. And I feel like a lot of people who are woke is such a overused word, but conscious people now are starting to just sense that there's something not quite right with what's going on. Like you say with the plant-based thing, you know, I feel like I was a massive meat eater. I was mixed grill with no sides. Do you know what I'm saying? But then my ex-girlfriend turned vegan. At first, I kicked right off. I was like, because I love fine dining. I like, we have flown all over the world to go to the best restaurants. I was like, no, we're not going to be able to go to no nice restaurants no more. It's going to cause problems in our relationship. But, you know, I like to debate, and I'm a researcher, and I feel like, you know, without, again, I'm pro-choice. I'm not a judgy vegan. Everyone makes their own decisions. I always say, let he without sin cast the first stone, yeah? So, like, I'm plant-based, but I've still got an iPhone that's got lithium in it from child minds. So I don't believe everyone's too busy pointing their fingers at other people and putting themselves on a pedestal rather than looking in the fucking mirror. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so I feel like with the vegan angle, although I don't judge, in my opinion, as an intelligent, compassionate person, if you take the time to research it, whether it's the environmental argument, whether it's the moral argument, or whether it's the health argument, they are compelling in their own way. And that's why I feel like a lot of people now, one way or the other, a lot of conscious people are finding their way, are leaning towards a plant-based lifestyle. They're leaning towards mindfulness and meditation. They're finding themselves drawn to greenery and open areas. They're finding themselves coming into contact with like-minded people. And it definitely, without being too left with it, it definitely feels like there are strong forces pulling in two very different directions at the minute. You know what I mean?
I feel like with the whole pandemic, and then if you funnel it down to what I said earlier, which was about the vaccinations, and I'm putting it out there, I've said it a few times, I think you should have a choice. You should either have it or don't have it, depending on if you feel like you need it or not. Right now, it's almost like, here's the marketing pitch, and we're going to keep on pitching you until you fucking do it, and we're going to make you feel bad if you don't do it, and we're going to restrict your life if you don't do it, which I think is bang out of order. It's wrong. And what it's done is divided people. And my dad's had it, and my dad is very on, you should have it. My mum, you said the name earlier, David Icke. My mum is like the female David Icke. I'm telling you, she researches so much. But I said to my dad, even to my mum, the irony is, my dad only listens to mainstream media. He'll buy a Daily Mail and read it. I'd call my dad a normal geezer. Like, you know, he's a bit of a wheeling dealer. He's done all right for himself, but he's very much, pint, geezer. You know, have a fry up. Yeah, have a fry. You've got to have a fry up because that's what gives you the energy. Like, completely, like, he's never done any research in his life. Then my mum, on the other hand, she'll listen to something, she'll go, right, I'm going to research that, and she'll listen to like talk radio, for example, which they have open debates with scientists. She'll go on to the Higher Wire, she'll listen to David Icke, she'll listen to that person, and she'll come back with X, Y, Z. He'll go, no, that's not true because it's not in the mainstream media. And that in its own small little ecosystem is exactly what's happening all across the country. There's divide. You know, you should have it because this is what... No, I don't want to have it because of this. Oh, you're a conspiracy person. You're an anti-vaxxer. It's not that. I'm pro my immune system. I'm 35 years of age. I was competing in a boxing match 2 years ago against a geezer who was 24, 25 years of age, and I was out the ring for 6 years, and I came back and I won that fight, and I'd done it all on a soup diet. I said to myself, I had to lose loads of weight to get down to 73, 74 kilo. I walk around 79, 80, 81 sometimes. And the reason why I mention this is because I know my body. I know how I can manipulate it in a good way for it to become fitter, stronger, more immune to certain things. And I feel that once you're more on the angle of prevention rather than cure, unless you're really overweight, unless you've had a heart scare, unless you feel really, really old and you feel like you need it, crack on. But do not manipulate me to try and force me to do something that I probably don't need to do. And that's just my view. And then, like I said, I say that to someone who's not a critical thinker, they'll be right on their defence. It's like, no, you got to do that, and you're going against the grain and everything else. Well, all my life I've been going against the grain. You know, I didn't get any good. I didn't get any good education really. I was in school, never bunked off school, but I didn't really qualify very well. I didn't go to university, and I had my head of the year saying to me, you will never ever get a good job, you will never amount to nothing. Well, fucking, I've done all right so far. So just because you haven't done something textbook doesn't mean it's wrong or out of the ordinary. And again, I'm going off in a bit of a rant because, like you, I feel like things are coming to a head now, and I feel like there could be a bit of a war eventually. I feel like there could be a national and international war, because this is like a new religion now. Have you been vaccinated? Do you believe in the pandemic and all that kind of stuff? And if you're either on this side or that side, whereas before you could be in the middle and that would be cool, and now it's not.
It's like you say, it's an interesting one, because again, same way with like my parents are probably similar age to your parents. The difficulty for them, and again, which is what I've been telling my mates, because like my mates are really like heavily, like they're quite aggressive with their conspiracies. Do you know what I mean? What we'd call conspiracy, what we call the alternative explanation to what's going on. And although I don't believe a word the mainstream media says, I'm still wary of the alternative explanation because I believe that you can't take either on face value. So I'll try and find a critical explanation in the middle of both.
Well, I was just to jump in there, I was told, you know, when they were coming out to clap the NHS, yeah? I mean, I always found that a little bit, sort of in a way, slightly ridiculous, because I was thinking, one, I don't believe the numbers which are going into the NHS. I live by a hospital, and I remember going in there around that sort of time, and it wasn't overwhelmed and people dying and everything else. It was just like any normal time. Anyway, so I used to go for a run, and they all be standing outside clapping, and then someone told me, which is a theory, and again, I'm not ruling it out, I just don't think it's that right with me. They were saying, oh, they're clapping because that's when they was turning on the 4G to test it, and so it was drowning out the humming sound that the 4G was creating. Now, that could be right, I don't know. I'm not ruling anything out. I believe in life, anything's possible, but personally, they didn't sit right with me. But again, I'm not going to ridicule that person, say you're fucking, you know, you're stupid. I mean, I know I'm digressing here, but even like I've seen Joe Rogan's post recently, and I even watched something from CNN, and it was clearly a military plane or a submarine or something was following basically a UFO, and it was watching it, and it disappeared off the thing, and it's been spotted so many times now. And they're saying this thing moves like nothing else on this planet. And there's a video of it. And I said to my dad, he's like, you're nuts. You're nuts. I said, but Dad, you believe in the mainstream media. This is on the mainstream media. So you can't pick and choose what you believe in. It's like, you know.
The thing is, I feel like with our parents' generation, right, is they haven't been, especially the pre-internet generation, is they've been specifically conditioned not to think critically. So even if it goes back to, you look at education system in this country, right, you don't get any sort of marks for your own opinion until you do a PhD. Everything through school, all of your GCSEs, A-levels degree, case studies. What's your source? You can't say I think this. You have to say I think this because Steve said it in this book, or I think this because Scott said it in that book. But that might be wrong because John said it in that book. And until you do a PhD, you're not encouraged to think critically. And so then what we have is, you're not encouraged to think critically. You're encouraged to just learn, do as you're told, and you
Recite.
Exactly, regurgitate, learn and regurgitate, and become a puppet. And then what happens? And you're then fed by the media. And it's not really until the internet came about and there's been access to knowledge for an alternative narrative to the media. So now our generation and beyond, we're kind of taught, we're taught to question things. And that's why sometimes I'll sow seeds and I'll say little things to my mum and dad, and they learn now there's enough I'm able to disprove the media enough for them to start to ask questions. Do you know what I mean? But I think the problem is at the minute is if you believe in what I'll say it openly, whatever you want to call it, New World Order, whatever it is, there is a agenda, in my opinion, by a very small minority on the planet who control the vast majority of the wealth to create mass control over global citizens, right? And I believed, and if you look at a lot of this information is open. If you look into ID 2020 and Agenda 2030 and the World Economic Forum have openly released a podcast talking about the year's 2030. I don't know if you've seen it. The year is 2030. I own nothing. I have no privacy.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
I'm happy. Yeah, it was marketing.
Weird fucking dystopian shit that's going on. But the problem is now, I think a lot of these restrictions and a lot of the way we're being told to stand up, sit down, look left, look right, put a mask on, don't put a mask on, go outside, don't go outside. I feel like we're being divided now into the compliers and the non-compliers. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I'm saying? And now my worry as we're moving towards, because I feel like we're going to get let out and then we're going to get put back in again. And then what's going to happen then is everyone's going to turn on the unvaccinated people and start pointing fingers. And it was interesting because I remember when we started approaching the vaccine, right? I said to my friend, I said, I'm interested how the narrative changes, because up to this point, we've all been guilt tripped into it. Yeah, it's all been do this to protect the NHS, do that to protect your nan, do this to protect this person. Do you know what I mean? Wear a mask to protect your nan, stay in your house to protect your nan, sit down and shut the fuck up to protect your neighbours. It's all been about guilt tripping you because you could be a threat to someone else. So I thought, all right, then when the vaccine comes, how's that narrative going to change? Because then all of a sudden, surely if you've been vaccinated, I'm only a risk to my fellow non-vaccinated friends. So you ain't got to worry about me. But then lo and behold, the vaccine doesn't stop you from getting it, and it doesn't stop you from transmitting it. And so if it doesn't work, then what's the point in the fucking vaccine?
Yeah. I mean, I was always told, and again, I don't know because I'm not a biologist, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but my understanding when they were pitching it is it's going to bring down your chances of going into hospital. Okay, fair enough, cool. My chances as a 35 fit, relatively young guy who's very active with my sport, with training, my nutrition, and have been a bit more aware than the average person, I would say, about what I put in my body in regards to food on a day-to-day basis, even things like distilled water. Me and my family only drink distilled water. I don't drink tap water. People might call me a conspiracy person or a nutter, but if you do a test on and I've done it myself, you buy a machine and you can test how much metal is in your water. It's alarming, literally, how much is in there. So now the distilled water and small little changes like that is allowed my immune system to be quite strong.
1 second on water, I heard something a lot because I haven't touched it. I will sit there with the driest mouth in the world, and I still won't touch that water. I ain't touched it for about 4 years, maybe, right? And the other day, I heard something alarming. Do you know how much estrogen? Yeah. You heard this? How much estrogen is in tap water?
Chlorine.
Because of the reason the estrogen is in tap water is because the average glass of tap water that goes into your body has passed through someone's body 6 times and been filtered. And the estrogen from women's bodies through the contraceptive pill is why there's high levels of estrogen in the water. And it's like, why on earth would you drink that? Yeah,
there's lead, mercury, everything else in it. And so, going back to it, like, again, if you want to take it, crack on and take it. You know, it's like again, going back to my mum and dad. My mum's a bit like this as well. Like, let's just say Mason, my son, was crying, he had a toothache or an earache. The natural thing straight away is paracetamol, because that's all it is. And I'm thinking, but if he had coconut water, for it's a raw coconut water, ginger, stuff is natural, which take away information. That's the right thing. You don't want to cover it up by doing pharmaceutical drugs every single time. Again, I might sound like a tree hugger here, and I might sound like some sort of hippie, but I think when you strip everything back, a lot of the time, it is about a marketing pitch to make money.
100%. And but look at how many times we've both paraphrased ourselves to like, I said, I might sound like a hippie, I might sound like that. And even now, we're kind of like explaining ourselves or feeling like we have to explain ourselves for having an alternative opinion and like where the abstract ones. Whereas actually, if you actually take yourself away from society and look at it objectively, like you just paraphrased yourself to try and give an explanation for using natural remedies which occur from the earth, because the perception or the social norm is to use a manufactured substance to treat symptoms, which notoriously doesn't solve the root cause of any illness, paracetamol, which is purely just for treating symptoms. And I feel like the whole pharmaceutical industry has been designed to treat symptoms rather than to get to the root cause of anything. Because when you go to the doctors, when I did go to the doctors, I don't go to the doctors no more. When I did go to the doctors and I was ill and I had a cold, I can't remember ever being asked, what's your diet like? What's your lifestyle like? What's your stress levels like? Do you know what I mean? How much do you exercise? It was like, here's some antibiotics. Do you know what I mean? And then this whole industry has then been created. And I remember reading a Goldman Sachs paper that was published about pharmaceutical industry that said the patient cured, the customer lost. And now these are the same people that are developing these vaccines that we're now being psychologically fucking manipulated and coerced into injecting ourselves with. And then I'm apparently a conspiracist because I don't trust it. It doesn't make sense.
I think it would feel like it's blindly obvious to a lot of people, but again, it just shows you the power of a sale at the end of the day. They're selling people, and it's on emotion, not on logic. Because logically, if we all thought to ourselves, how many people do we know have actually died from it or really got it badly? Not really many. Like probably, I don't know really anybody. I mean, I've had my missus's mate say, yeah, Nanny this died. Yeah, but how old was she? 84 years of age. I mean, really, can you pull it down to that? I mean, Anyway, so yeah, I think a lot of logic's gone out the window, and they are guilt tripping us into a corner, but only time will tell. Look, going back to like you as an individual, and also like the career of the Manor, where do you see yourself over the next few years with the group? Have you got any good plans coming up soon, or anything you're doing?
We've got we were gonna try and squeeze it out this year, but in the gap that we're hopefully going to be allowed to live a free life over the next few weeks, but we're moving it till next year. We're throwing our own festival. We're going to call it Manifest.
Nice.
And yeah, we're gonna, and again, we're gonna just take it into our own hands, And we've realised over the course of the last year that we have a operational, profitable business, and we don't need radio, we don't need Spotify, we don't need the music industry per se to give us anything, because we've got a loyal, engaged buying fan base, and so we're going to do everything ourselves. So we thought, all right, cool. Festival bookings come and go. We got booked for a load last year. We've been rebooked for some this year, but who knows if you're going to be the people at the moment? Who knows if you're going to get booked next year? Whereas if we can build our own brand as a festival, we can throw that every year, and if everyone has a good time, they're going to come back next year. So we're going to throw our own festival, Manifest, headline it ourselves, do the bar ourselves. We've got a great site in North Greenwich, outside the magazine near the O2, which is on the river. Our main stage is going to arrive on the river. If I've got anything to do with it, we're going to arrive by boat, which will be fucking sick, and have that all filmed on a VT. So yeah, we're going to throw our own festival and headline it. We've got a load of music coming. We're going to be obviously heavily involved in my app, in the Bando app, and hopefully that's going to be something that's going to really empower musicians to become their own business, And this is the thing. I've crunched the numbers on this, and OnlyFans can say that they convert 2.5, an average of 2.5% of someone's Instagram followers into platform subscribers. I feel that musicians will convert better, because I think that there's a real strong connection between a musician and their most loyal fans. You know, I feel like the only comparison is maybe football, but even football, the connections with the team rather than the individual. Whereas everyone's kind of got their favourite celebrities, but how much do you watch your favourite actor? Probably not every day. Do you know what I mean? Even your favourite footballer, how much do you watch him play football? Not every day. Your favourite musician, you listen to them every day, and that vibration provokes an emotion in you. And we've crunched the numbers, and if we convert as musicians anywhere from 3.5 to 5% of our Instagram following into a £5 monthly subscription, we will be earning significantly more money from our art than anywhere else in the music industry. And most importantly, there won't be any other corporations involved. They won't need any outside entities. We won't need brand sponsorships. We're trying to really create a vehicle for all musicians to become their own self-sustainable business. And so something I believe in as a marketing tool and from business, but it's something which I think has a real social purpose to it as well.
Proper sick, and I've absolutely bought into that vision, mate. And it's clear that you're onto something. You said earlier about doing warm up acts for like the streets. Number one, what was that like? I mean, what was that like to be in amongst like with Mike and his team, etc. But then also, is there any other artists, like fairly big artists, that like people like Example? I feel like Example would be like the synergy between you guys and him and the streets is kind of, it all feels quite similar in some aspects.
Yeah, the Streets tour was fucking surreal, man. Like even just the way it came about, because the Streets are probably, well, we all come from different backgrounds and we've all got our own different musical influences, but Mike Skinner and the Streets are probably the biggest soul influence on our music, and that's quite clear. And I remember, so the tour was January 2019. And when they toured in 2018, we had tickets to the gig. And our manager called up the day of the gig and he was like, I got good news. You guys have been booked as main support for the Streets tour next year.
Wow.
16 shows in 21 days around the country.
Jesus.
And he said, do you want to go? They've asked if you want to go backstage today for the show. And we were like, nah. Like, we're going to be backstage all next year. I want to go in the crowd and live it as fans.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it was just an amazing experience, man. Like, just to be on tour, and like Mike he's just an absolute like anomaly of a person. Like, he's so creative. He's just a creative genius. Like, watching him perform, like his energy, he's just like encapsulating like the room. He just controls the room, and he's got every single person in there hanging off his every word. And I feel like I watched him perform for every gig out in the crowd. Do you know what I mean? And a few of them, like, we'd had a drink and we had a show, and we went and met some birds in the crowd and hang around with them for a bit. But then I think quite a few of them, I went and sat upstairs by myself and just studied him, and just studied what he did, studied his movement, studied the way he spoke to people, studied the way he would find people in the crowd, and you could see him engaging with people in their eyes. And I've got so many notes in my iPhone from that tour. Like, it was an amazing experience, and especially because it started off in Birmingham, which was Mike's hometown, and then finished at Brixton Academy, and we did 5 Brixton Academies in a row at the end. And like, we're obviously a very London-focused act, and I was like, it might be a little bit arrogant, but I said by the end it was like a joint tour, because by the end we had like as much of a following in there as they did. Do you know what I'm saying? I feel like at least sort of like 70% of the room would come to see both. So yeah, that was like that was an amazing experience, and something that like, that's when you talk about the whole journey and what you do it for. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm financially motivated and I want to have big hits and drive big cars and make millions. But in terms of like experiences as a human being, like to be on tour with someone who you used to listen to their music in school and idolize, there's like, you can't really draw many comparisons to that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, and then so that was amazing. And then to go on to, so what was the last thing you said after the Streets tour?
So like other people, like I said, Example and stuff.
Yeah, Example, we've got a sick tune with Example, but we were never allowed to release it because of the record label. And it's one of the, listen, like, I'm not super anti-labels at all. Like, those situations work out for a lot of people, and we've worked with some really great people at record labels, but there is an element of control that they have over your music. And so there's like, it was difficult for us because we kind of always built from the ground up, but to make music and be excited about something and then told that you can't release it was very difficult, especially for someone like myself. Like, I haven't worked for someone else for over a decade, and I've built my own businesses and I make my own decisions. Do you know what I'm saying? So to have someone else tell me I can't do something that I want to do was strange for me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so, yeah, example, hopefully now...
Do you reckon it will come out?
Yeah, so he's actually now... We were never allowed to release it after label. Like, being straight now, I'll say it completely openly, the label said that he didn't have enough buzz around him at the minute, and they thought that anyone who they wanted us to do a collab with, it had to be someone who's kind of... They're very much about clout at the minute. And lo and behold, the example now has made a massive comeback, and he's absolutely flying, and he always had it in him because he's a nice fella, he's super creative, and he's a sick artist. And he's actually now remixed that song into something that's a little bit more fitting in with the times now, and he's going to put it out on his new album.
Lovely.
So yeah, like, but even then, like, just to think in terms, it was always a little bit difficult. Collabs are quite difficult for us because there's 3 of us. Do you know what I mean? So even trying to accommodate all 3 of us on every track can be difficult. But just again, going back to live, like, to think, because like we do big shows, and even some of the acts that we've had supporting us at our shows, like P Money, like, it's like one of my favourite grime MCs.
Yeah.
I used to listen to in school. P Money supported us at one of our shows, which is crazy. Like Prez T, that's what we always used to do for our shows. We'd always try and book one act which is like kind of got a lot of buzz around them at the minute, and one act who's just someone who we like, who we think is sick. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, it's
P Money and Gets back in the day were wicked.
Yeah, unreal. Like, probably the best 2 lyricists in this country. Like, and I feel like if people appreciated like lyricism over here like they do in America, I've always said if they were born in the States, they'd both be like super multi-millionaires. Not that maybe they are, but do you know what I'm saying? I feel like they would be like a whole different level of perception. And it's only now Gets, with his recent album, that was an absolute masterpiece that went to number 2. Now he's finally getting recognition. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, it's sick the amount of people that I've come into contact with. And again, like I say, like this whole journey started because I love music. And so just being in and around people and being able to come into contact with people and having people on our shows, and even just the fact that now we can kind of get guest lists to other people's shows, and even going to little perks, man. Like, it's not like going to festivals as an artist is so much of a different experience to going to a festival as a punter. And I love festivals, but to go there, you don't have to queue up outside. You're not getting, for whatever reason, you're not getting frisked at the door. You've got a little dressing room that you can go and have a drink. When you want to go from stage to stage, you can go around the back. You can go and have a little breather. Yeah, like, it's a completely different experience, man. Like, it's a beautiful journey that I'm very grateful for.
Yeah, nice. I know you kind of covered it, but like you're a very, very driven individual, articulate. You know what you want out of life. Where do you actually see yourself 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? Have you got a bit of a roadmap, or are you just going to take it as it comes?
I try not, like I said, because I'm such a believer in change. I try not to plan too specifically, but I would like, so I'm 32 now, and I would like to be in a position. I want to create a situation in my 30s where I no longer have to work. And I still will, because I'm motivated and focused, but I want to put myself in a position of financial freedom within the next decade of my life, that I don't have to work. So I'd like to, the app, I think, is something that is, like I say, is being built from the ground up. It's being built for sale. Do you know what I'm saying? We've got someone sitting on the board as executive chair who's very experienced in taking software companies to exit.
Nice.
And so we're being built to potentially try and exit quite quickly. Hopefully one of the big boys, by the time they realise what they're doing, they'll just pay off to fuck off.
So you got 3 of you involved with that? As in from the Manor, all 3 of you, or just you?
No, just me.
Cool.
It's just me. I'm kind of like the music side of it, and then John Forbes and his brother are the tech side of it, and then we've got a couple other people I know.
Nice.
who have been brought on to help with the network and the workload. One of my friends, someone John knows called Ty, and one of my friends, a guy called Matt, who trades at JP Morgan, who brings a good network and good financial knowledge. So yeah, whether it's an app or it's music or whatever it is, I'd like to put myself in a position that I don't need to work anymore. And then my plan is that I want to invest in young entrepreneurs. I don't really believe in, I want to do charity work, but I don't really believe in, I'm not someone who thinks that, I want to pay for all my mates to stop working and pay for my family to never have to work again. I don't want to do that. I want to empower them to achieve their own financial freedom. So I want to invest in, do what the Forbes family group does, invest in young entrepreneurs, invest in my mates, invest in family members. And so anyone who's got an idea, come to me, and hopefully I'll have a bit of financial backing and I'll have the business now so that we can then go and make it happen. And so, yeah, I want to invest in young entrepreneurs, help my friends and family achieve financial freedom. And I would like to do some charity work on 3 facets with animals, young children and homeless people.
Yeah, amazing, mate. Look, I've really, really enjoyed the conversation. It's been quite diverse and everything else. Where can people find you just to follow your journey, mate?
Twitter and Instagram at Scotty Stacks, spelled how you'd expect it to be spelled, and Twitter and Instagram at _the Manor.
Nice one. I really want to take up the opportunity to interview all 3 of you at some point, so maybe we'll have that penciled in the future. That'd be really, really cool. I've got a catchphrase. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's not really a catchphrase, like a mantra. I developed it actually when I got into sales or owning my own sales company for the very, very first time. As you well know, sales is all about mindset, and it's all about living and breathing like you are a winner and developing into that role. So the mantra is be happy, never content. Be happy, never content. I've got my own version of that. What does it mean to you if you were to say be happy, never content? What does it mean to Scotty Stacks?
It kind of fits into my catchphrase, which is a little bit more broad, which I've got in my hand, which is, and so it is. And it's just, I feel like it's the concept of just surrender. Do you know what I mean? Surrender to where life takes you, accept things for what they are, but at the same time, make sure you know where you're going, what you're doing. Don't forget who you are. Do you know what I mean? I posted it on my Instagram yesterday, because I wanted to try and cheer people up after the England result. And it was, don't let a win go to your head, and don't let a loss get to your heart. Do you know what I mean? And I feel like that fits along with that. Be happy, never content.
Yeah, wicked. All right, nice one. Everybody, please go and follow Scotty, and look out for the Manor's next few projects coming up. And I hope you enjoyed this episode, and please share it to your friends and family. And thank you for all the support and lots more guests and great episodes coming up. Be happy, never content.
Thanks for having me.
Nice one, mate. Wicked.